The science vessel. Quiet Horizon drifted through the dark space near the outer rim. Inside, Commander Thelvin checked his instruments for the third time that hour. His long, delicate fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. The Veltari were known throughout the galaxy as brilliant scientists, but everyone also knew they were fragile. Their homeworld had light gravity and a calm atmosphere. War was something they only read about in history files. Thelvin's crew of 40 researchers were studying a beautiful nebula that glowed purple and blue in the distance. Chief Scientist Pelmara had been excited about this mission for months. She believed the nebula held secrets about how stars were born. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual readings," one of the junior scientists called out. His voice trembled slightly. Before Thelvin could respond, the ship's alarms screamed to life. 6 large vessels appeared on the sensors, emerging from hyperspace like sharks smelling blood and water. The computer identified them immediately. Kryn Raiders. Thelvin's heart sank. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Kryn. They were pirates who attacked defenseless ships, stealing cargo and taking prisoners to sell as slaves. The Galactic Council had issued sanctions against them for years, but the Kryn didn't care about paperwork and fines. "Shields up," Thelvin ordered, but he knew it was pointless. The Quiet Horizon had minimal shields designed only to protect against space debris. They had no weapons at all. Why would a science vessel need weapons? The Kryn ships were massive compared to the small research vessel. They bristled with cannons and missile ports. Thelvin could see them on his screen, moving into attack formation like predators surrounding prey. "Broadcast a distress signal," he shouted. "All frequencies, emergency channels." His communications officer began sending out the call for help. The message was simple and desperate. They gave their location, their situation, and pleaded for any nearby Galactic Council forces to assist them. The first Kryn shot hit their shields, and the whole ship shook. Lights flickered. Pelmara grabbed onto a console to keep from falling. "How long until Council peacekeepers arrive?" Thelvin asked. The communications officer checked his data. His face went pale, which for a Veltari meant his skin turned almost transparent. 6 days, Commander. The nearest patrol is 6 days away." 6 days. They wouldn't last 6 hours. The Kryn were playing with them. Their ships circled the Quiet Horizon, taking shots that drained the shields bit by bit. They weren't even trying to destroy the vessel quickly. They were having fun. Far across space, on the other side of the sector, Captain Taeyang sat in the command chair of the UHSV Indomitable. The heavy cruiser was on routine patrol, checking trade routes for any problems. It was boring work but necessary. Taeyang was tall for a human, with sharp eyes that constantly scanned his surroundings. He had served in Earth's Navy for 15 years before transferring to the new space fleet. His crew respected him because he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. Lieutenant Hana sat at the communication station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she monitored dozens of channels at once. She was young but incredibly skilled. She could pull signals out of background noise that other officers would miss entirely. "Captain," Hana said suddenly, "I'm picking up a distress call. It's faint, but it's definitely an emergency channel." Taeyang leaned forward. "Put it through." The desperate voice of Thelvin filled the bridge. The translator worked quickly, turning his alien language into Korean that the crew could understand. He was begging for help. His ship was under attack. They had no weapons. "Please, anyone, help us." "Location?" Taeyang asked. Hana's fingers flew over her console. 3 light-years away, sir." Commander Minho, Taeyang's second-in-command, pulled up the tactical data. He was older than the captain, with gray in his hair and scars from the old wars on Earth. "The nearest council fleet is 6 days out. We're the closest ship." Taeyang didn't hesitate. "Set course. Maximum burn. Battle stations." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers began preparations for combat. Weapons Officer Doyen started charging the railguns. Helmsman Nari calculated the fastest route. Minho stepped closer to Taeyang and lowered his voice. "Sir, our orders are to patrol this sector. We're not supposed to leave our assigned area. The council will complain that we're overstepping our authority. Taeyang met his eyes. Then they can file a complaint after we save those people. Set the course. Minho nodded. He had expected that answer. That's why he served under Taeyang. The Indomitable and its escort ships turned hard. 2 destroyers and a support carrier followed the heavy cruiser. Their engines began pushing at levels that would tear apart most alien vessels. The ships were built heavy, with thick armor plating made from metals mined from Earth's abundant resources. They could take punishment that would destroy sleeker alien designs. Inside the ships, the human crews settled into their acceleration couches. Special gel surrounded their bodies, helping them withstand the crushing force as the ships pushed harder and harder. Most alien species would have passed out from the G-forces. Some would have died. But humans had evolved on a heavy gravity world where everything tried to kill them. Their bodies were built to endure. Back on the quiet horizon, the situation was getting worse. The Kryn had stopped playing. Boarding pods launched from their ships, magnetic clamps extending like metal claws. "They're boarding us!" Pelmara cried out. Thelvin made a quick decision. All non-essential personnel, hide in the laboratory sections. Lock the doors. Maybe they'll just take the ship and leave us alive. He didn't believe it, but he had to give his crew hope. The boarding pods clamped onto the hull with loud metallic thuds that echoed through the corridors. Cutting torches began burning through the airlocks. The Kryn were coming. Then, Hana's voice crackled through the quiet horizon's speakers. The sound made every Veltari jump in surprise. "Quiet Horizon, this is UHSV Indomitable. We received your distress call. Hold on, we're coming." Thelvin felt confused. Indomitable. He quickly searched the ship registry database. Human? His blood went cold. There were stories about humans, terrible stories. They came from a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planets ever discovered. The gravity alone would crush most species. Their own planet's life had tried to kill them at every turn, and somehow they survived. They evolved as hunters, as predators. "What's your estimated time of arrival?" Thelvin asked, his voice shaking. 11 minutes, Hana responded calmly. Impossible. They had been 3 light years away. What kind of engines could cross that distance so quickly? What kind of crew could survive the acceleration needed for such speed? The Kryn cutting torches broke through the airlock. Armored warriors began pouring into the ship. They were large and brutal, carrying weapons designed to hurt and capture rather than kill quickly. Thelvin and his crew huddled in the research bay, certain they were about to die or worse. The Kryn were known for taking slaves, for selling prisoners to the worst parts of the galaxy. In space, the Kryn fleet commander Vector received a proximity alert. His screen showed 4 vessels dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The readings made no sense. The ships were running incredibly hot, like their engines had been pushed far beyond safe limits. The mass readings showed armor plating far heavier than any civilized species would use. Vector opened a communication channel, ready to threaten these newcomers into running away. A human face appeared on his screen. Vector had seen many species in his years of raiding, but humans were different. Unsettling. They had forward-facing eyes like predators. They showed their teeth when they spoke. Even through a video screen, they seemed dangerous. "This is Captain Park Taeyang of the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable," the human said. His voice was calm but hard as steel. "You are attacking a ship under Galactic Council protection. Disengage immediately or be fired upon." Vector laughed. 4 ships against his 6? And humans? The species that the Council barely tolerated? Little Deathworlder, go back to your toxic planet. This is Kryn business. The human's expression didn't change, not even a flicker of emotion. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw your boarding parties and retreat. This is your only warning." Vector cut the channel. Another idealistic species that thought they could play hero. He had dealt with Council peacekeepers before. They followed rules and protocols. They would fire warning shots and demand surrender. By then, he would have secured the science vessel and escaped into hyperspace. 30 seconds passed. The human fleet opened fire. Vector's world exploded into chaos. The first railgun shot from the Indomitable hit a Kryn warship with the force of a meteor strike. The solid tungsten round punched through the shields like they weren't even there. Most species in the galaxy had abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. They were primitive, uncivilized. But the Kryn had designed their shields to stop energy weapons, not solid metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Kryn ship's hull tore open. Air and debris exploded into space. Vector watched his tactical display in disbelief as one of his best warships went dark, tumbling away with its engines dead. "Return fire!" he screamed. His remaining ships opened up with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked toward the human vessels. They should have been easy targets. The human ships were heavy and should have been slow. But they weren't. Aboard the Indomitable, helmsman Nari threw the ship into a corkscrew pattern that would have torn apart any normal vessel. The heavy cruiser twisted and turned with impossible agility. In the acceleration couches, the crew endured G-forces that would have killed most aliens. Their gel-filled seats helped, but it was their own biology that saved them. Humans had evolved to endure punishment. "Targeting solution acquired," Weapons Officer Doyen reported. His voice was steady despite the crushing force pressing down on him. Firing. The railgun spoke again. Two more Kryn ships took hits. One lost its engines completely. The other's hull cracked open along its entire length. Commander Minho watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Their shields are useless against kinetic rounds. They didn't expect anyone to still use solid projectiles. "Their mistake," Taeyang said quietly. "Nari, bring us around. Give Doyen a clear shot at their command ship." The Kryn return fire splashed against the Indomitable's armor. The heavy plating glowed red from the heat, but it held. Earth had abundant heavy metals, and human engineers had built these ships like they built everything to survive. Vector realized his error too late. These weren't like other species. They didn't follow the rules of civilized warfare. They built ships like fortresses and used weapons that should have been in museums. And they were winning. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. But the two human destroyers, commanded by Captains Hyun and Jisoo, had already flanked the Kryn formation. Their missile batteries opened up. Not clean plasma seekers that could be jammed or fooled with countermeasures. These were fusion warheads. Primitive nuclear weapons wrapped in guidance systems. The missiles hit two more Kryn ships. The fusion explosions turned space white for a moment. When the light faded, those ships were either destroyed or disabled, drifting hulks leaking atmosphere. In 8 minutes, Vector had lost 4 of his 6 ships. The remaining 2 turned to run. Inside the quiet horizon, Thelvin and his crew heard the Kryn warriors shouting in confusion. The boarding party had been minutes away from reaching the research bay. Now they seemed uncertain. Then new sounds echoed through the corridors. Heavy footsteps. Magnetic boots on metal floors. The door to the corridor exploded inward. Not carefully cut or hacked, just blown off its hinges. Human Marines stormed through the opening. They wore powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. Each one stood 8 feet tall in their suits, with weapons that looked far too large for any normal being to carry. Lance Corporal Seojin led the team. Through his helmet visor, he could see 6 Kryn warriors. They were big, nearly 7 feet tall without armor. They carried energy rifles and wore combat gear that looked expensive. The Kryn fired first. Their weapons were designed to incapacitate civilians, to cause pain without causing too much damage to valuable slaves. The energy bolts hit Seojin's armor and did nothing more than scorch the paint. "Suppressing fire," Seojin said calmly into his radio. His squad returned fire with precision. Not to kill, but to neutralize. Humans had learned warfare in the harshest possible way, fighting each other for thousands of years on a planet that was already trying to kill them. They knew exactly how much force was needed. The Kryn warriors went down one by one, stunned, wounded, but alive. Seojin's team moved through them like a machine, efficient and relentless. Within 3 minutes, the entire boarding party was subdued and being dragged back to the Indomitable's brig. Thelvin cautiously emerged from the research bay. He saw the human Marines securing the last of the Kryn. One of the Marines, he could see a name tag that read Seojun, turned to face him. Even through the armor's helmet, Thelvin could see those predator eyes. "Are you Commander Thelvin?" Seojun asked. The translator in his suit made the words understandable. Yes, Thelvin managed to say. "Your ship is secure, sir. Medical teams are on their way to treat your wounded. We'll have engineers check your systems for damage." Just like that. Matter of fact. As if rescuing a ship from pirates was just another task on a checklist. More humans arrived. These wore medical insignia instead of combat armor. Dr. Yuna moved quickly through the ship, scanning the Veltari crew for injuries. She found Pelmara holding her arm, which had cracked during the attack. "Let me see that," Yuna said gently. She pulled out instruments that Pelmara didn't recognize. "Your carapace structure is interesting. Chitinous base with silicate reinforcement. I'll need to adjust the bonding agent." She worked with intense focus, her hands steady and sure. Within minutes, she had sealed the crack and applied something that would help it heal properly. Pelmara stared at her in amazement. "How did you know how to treat my species? We've never shared medical data with humans." Yuna smiled. "I've been scanning and analyzing your biology in real time. Your structure is similar to some species on Earth, so I adapted techniques. You'll be fine." Pelmara realized something unsettling. These humans didn't just fight well. They adapted. They learned. They solved problems on the move. On the bridge of the Quiet Horizon, Lieutenant Hana set up a portable command station. She was coordinating the rescue operations, tracking multiple teams at once, and somehow making it all look easy. Thelvin approached her carefully. "Your people came so fast. You pushed your ship so hard. Why? You don't know us. The Veltari have no alliance with Earth. We've even voted against your applications for expanded council participation." Hana looked genuinely confused by the question. "You sent a distress call. People were in danger. But we're not your allies. We're not even friendly toward your species in council politics." Hana's expression hardened slightly. "That's politics. This is about people who needed help. We don't really separate the two in our minds. If someone's in trouble and we can help, we help. It's that simple." Thelvin didn't know what to say. In the galactic community, everything was calculated. Alliances, trade agreements, military assistance, all of it was weighed and measured. Help came with strings attached, with expectations of repayment. But these humans seemed to genuinely not care about any of that. In space, the battle was over. 2 Kryn ships tried to flee, but Captains Hyun and Jisoo pursued them with grim determination. Precise shots disabled their engines. The ships drifted helplessly, waiting to be collected. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Taeyong walked through his ship, checking on his crew. The battle had been short but intense. Everyone had performed perfectly. He felt a surge of pride in his people. He stopped by the medical bay where Dr. Yoonji was treating a few crew members for minor injuries from the high-G maneuvers. Nothing serious. Bruises, mostly. "How are we looking?" he asked. "Everyone will be fine, Captain. We're built tough." Taeyong nodded. "What about the Veltari? Any serious injuries among their crew?" Yuna reports 3 with significant trauma, but they'll all survive. She's brilliant. Already figured out their entire physiology and adapted our medical techniques. Good. Make sure they get everything they need. Taeyang continued to the brig, where the captured Kryn were being held. Vector sat in one of the cells, glaring at everyone who passed. When he saw Taeyang, his expression turned even darker. "You'll face council justice for this," Vector snarled. "Excessive force. Violations of engagement protocols. We were merely conducting salvage operations." Commander Minho, who was overseeing the prisoners, laughed harshly. "Salvage? You fired on a civilian vessel, boarded her with armed troops. On Earth, we call that piracy. Council law requires proportional response. You destroyed 4 of my ships." Taeyang leaned against the wall outside the cell, studying Vector with cold eyes. "Your species has been raiding outer sectors for decades. The Council issues sanctions and fines, which you ignore. You prey on those too weak to fight back." His voice dropped lower, becoming almost conversational. Where we come from, predators who hunt the weak get put down, permanently. Vector felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine fear. There was no anger in the human's voice, no bluster or threats. Just a simple statement of fact delivered by a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through sheer determination. The Council will never allow... The Council, Taeyong interrupted calmly, will review the sensor logs showing you attacking a science vessel unprovoked. They'll see you ignored warnings to disengage, and they'll see that we stopped you from harming innocents. He pushed off from the wall and turned to leave. In the meantime, you'll be transferred to Veltari custody to face trial for your crimes. I suggest you hope they're more merciful than we would be. As Taeyang walked away, Minho fell into step beside him. Sir, we're receiving reports from the other ships. All Kryn vessels are secured. 0 casualties on our side. And the Veltari? 3 serious injuries, several minor ones. All will survive thanks to Yuna's quick work. Taeyang nodded. Good. Prepare a full report for command. And send a message to the Veltari government. Let them know their people are safe. Already done, sir. They walked in silence for a moment before Minho spoke again. The council won't be happy about this. Taeyang smiled slightly. Probably not. But those 40 Veltari researchers get to go home to their families. That's what matters. Agreed, sir. Across the ship, the crew went about their duties. They had done what needed to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. For humans, that was enough. The Indomitable remained near the quiet horizon for 2 days while repairs were completed. Human engineers worked alongside Veltari technicians, fixing damaged systems and reinforcing weak points in the hull. The Veltari were amazed at how quickly the humans worked, and how they seemed to understand alien technology after only brief examination. Engineer Nari, who had left her helm position to help with repairs, explained it to a curious Veltari technician. Our ships use multiple technology types because Earth had different nations developing different systems. We learned early to make everything work together, even when it shouldn't. Makes us good at adapting. The Veltari technician watched as Nari jury-rigged a power coupling using parts from 3 different systems. It shouldn't have worked according to standard engineering principles, but it did. Your species is very practical, the technician observed. Nari grinned. We learned to be. On Earth, if something didn't work, you died. Natural selection made us pretty good problem solvers. Meanwhile, Dr. Yuna spent hours with the Veltari medical staff, sharing techniques and learning about their biology. Dr. Yunji joined her, fascinated by how different species had evolved. Your healing process is remarkable, Yunji told Chief Scientist Pelmara, who had recovered well from her injury. The silicate reinforcement in your carapace actually strengthens as it heals. Earth species usually form weaker scar tissue. Pelmara tilted her head in the Veltari gesture of curiosity. How does your species heal? You're so soft compared to us. Yuna laughed. Very slowly and painfully, but our immune systems are incredibly aggressive. We evolved on a world where everything was trying to infect us or poison us. Our bodies learned to fight back hard. That sounds terrible, Pelmara said with genuine sympathy. It was, Yunji agreed. But it made us tough. And now that toughness helps us help others. The cultural exchange fascinated both species. The Veltari had never spent extended time with humans before. Most species avoided them, nervous about their Deathworld origins and their intense nature. But spending time with them revealed something unexpected. Humans were kind. Commander Thelvin discussed this with Pelmara in the research bay one evening. They're so gentle with us, he said, confusion in his voice. I've watched their Marines. They move like trained killers, but when they help our people, they're so careful, so patient. I noticed that too, Pelmara agreed. Dr. Yuna explained something to me. She said humans have a strong protective instinct, especially toward those they perceive as vulnerable. It comes from how they raise their young on Earth. Human children are helpless for years, so adults evolve to protect and nurture. But they're also warriors, killers even. Yes, both things are true. They protect fiercely because they know how to fight. They understand violence, so they know when it's necessary and when it's not. This duality confused and impressed the Veltari. In most species, you were either a warrior or a caretaker. Humans somehow managed to be both. On the third day, a Galactic Council inspection ship arrived. The vessel was sleek and beautiful, built for diplomacy rather than combat. It carried Council Overseer Tal Wen, a luminous who specialized in investigating military incidents. Captain Ta Yang met Tal Wen in one of the Indomitable's conference rooms. Commander Minho and Lieutenant Hana attended as well, along with Commander Thelvin as a witness. Tal Wen was tall and thin, glowing with soft bioluminescence. Her species communicated partially through light patterns, which made them excellent diplomats. They could see emotions that others tried to hide. Captain Taeyang, she said, her voice melodious. The Council has received multiple reports about the incident. I'm here to gather facts. Of course, Taeyang replied. We're happy to cooperate. All our sensor logs are available for your review. Tal Wen's light patterns flickered in a way that indicated surprise. Most species tried to hide evidence or spin narratives. This human was offering everything freely. Very well. Please explain the sequence of events from your perspective. Taeyang laid it out clearly and without embellishment. They received a distress call. They responded. They gave the Kryn a chance to withdraw. The Kryn refused. Combat ensued. The Kryn were defeated and captured. You destroyed 4 vessels and disabled 2 others, Tal Wen noted. The Kryn commander claims this was excessive force. Before Taeyang could respond, Thelvin spoke up. If I may, Overseer, the humans saved my crew. The Kryn were boarding our ship. They would have killed us or taken us as slaves. The humans stopped them. I don't doubt that, Commander Thelvin, but the question is whether the response was proportional. Minho leaned forward. With respect, Overseer, proportional to what? To the threat. The Kryn had 6 warships, we had 4. They fired first, they ignored warnings. What would have been proportional in your opinion? Tal Wen's lights flickered in thought. Council doctrine suggests disabling enemy vessels when possible and avoiding unnecessary destruction. We did disable vessels when possible, Taeyang said calmly. 2 of the Kryn ships are still intact. We could have destroyed all 6. We showed restraint. But you pursued fleeing vessels. Fleeing criminals. They attacked a civilian ship. Would you have preferred we let them escape to attack someone else next week? The question hung in the air. Tal Wen had no good answer. Council doctrine said to let enemies retreat if they disengaged, but everyone knew the Kryn would simply raid again. Hana added her perspective. Overseer, I've been monitoring communications since the incident. 17 frontier colonies have sent us messages. They're thanking us. They're asking for human patrol routes to include their sectors. For years, they've lived in fear of raiders. Now they have hope. Tal Wen's lights dimmed thoughtfully. I see. Captain Taeyang, can you explain why you responded to a distress call outside your assigned patrol sector? Because someone needed help and we could provide it. That's not a military reason. Maybe not by council standards, Taeyang agreed. But it's a human reason. We don't ignore people in danger because they're outside our jurisdiction. Tal Wen studied him carefully. Her species could read emotional honesty through subtle cues. This human believed every word he was saying. There was no political calculation, no hidden agenda. Just genuine conviction that helping others was the right thing to do. The council will need to review this, she said finally. Your actions don't fit within standard protocols. I understand, Taeyang said. If the council wants to reprimand me, that's their right. But I'd do it again. After the meeting, Tal Wen toured the Indomitable with her assistant. She watched the crew go about their duties. They were professional and efficient, but there was also camaraderie. They joked with each other. They helped each other. They functioned as a family as much as a military unit. She saw Dr. Yuna and Dr. Yunji teaching Veltari medical students. She saw engineers from both species working together, laughing at shared problems. She saw Lance Corporal Seojin playing some kind of game with Veltari children who had been on the science vessel. Their parents had brought them along for the research mission. They're so different from what I expected, Talwen's assistant said quietly. How so? The reports make them sound like dangerous warriors. But look at them. They're gentle with the Veltari. They're teaching, sharing, befriending them. Talwen nodded slowly. Because they can be both. That's what makes them frightening to the Council. Most species are one thing or another. Warriors or scholars. Aggressive or peaceful. But humans are all of these things at once. In the brig, Talwen interviewed the captured Kryn. Vector ranted about human brutality and excessive force. His crew told similar stories, but Talwen noticed something. None of them were seriously injured. The humans could have killed them all easily, but chose not to. You fired on a civilian vessel, she pointed out to Vector. Salvage rights, he protested. There are no salvage rights for occupied vessels. You were committing piracy. We've been doing this for years. The Council knows. They just fine us. Yes, Talwen said softly. We do. And perhaps that's part of the problem. She realized something in that moment. The Council had become so focused on being civilized, on following protocols and procedures, that they had forgotten the actual purpose of laws. Protection. Justice. Safety for those who couldn't protect themselves. The humans hadn't forgotten. They couldn't forget because they came from a world that taught them every day that survival required action, not paperwork. That evening, Talwen dined with the senior officers of both the human and Veltari vessels. The food was Earth cuisine, simple but flavorful. The humans had learned to synthesize dishes that most species could safely eat. Tell me about Earth, Talwen asked Taeyang. What was it like growing up on a Class 12 death world? Taeyang smiled, but there was sadness in it. Hard. Beautiful, but hard. We had predators that hunted in packs, weather that could kill you in minutes, diseases that wiped out entire populations. But we also had beauty, mountains, oceans, forests full of life. It made you strong, Pelmara observed. It made us survivors, Minho corrected. And survivors look out for each other. You have to, or you don't survive. Is that why you help so readily? Talwen asked. Even those who aren't your allies? Taeyang considered the question carefully. I think it's because we know what it's like to need help and not get it. Human history is full of disasters where people died because no one came. We remember those failures. We carry them with us. So when we hear someone calling for help, we can't ignore it. We won't ignore it. Even if it costs you? Especially then. Because that's when it matters most. Talwen's lights pulsed in a pattern that indicated deep thought and respect. She was beginning to understand why humans made the Council nervous. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were different. They operated on principles that didn't fit neatly into the established order. And that difference might be exactly what the galaxy needed. As dinner ended and the officers returned to their duties, Talwen made her decision. Her report would tell the truth. The humans had acted outside protocol, yes. But they had also saved lives, stopped criminals, and inspired hope across multiple sectors. Sometimes, she realized, doing the right thing and following the rules weren't the same. And sometimes, the right thing mattered more. 3 days later, Captain Taeyang stood in a communication chamber aboard Galactic Council Station Harmony 9. The room was designed for holographic conferences, allowing representatives from across the galaxy to meet without traveling. Around him appeared the shimmering forms of council members, dozens of species, each one watching him with varying degrees of curiosity, concern, or disapproval. The High Arbiter, a luminous named Shirek, sat at the center. His lights pulsed with authority and barely concealed irritation. Next to Taeyang stood Ambassador Kelmith of the Veltari, who had requested to speak on behalf of the rescued crew. Captain Park Taeyang, Shirek began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. Your actions have created considerable debate within the Council. You violated 17 protocols regarding military engagement. The use of kinetic weapons, fusion warheads, and what your report calls aggressive pursuit is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Taeyang stood at attention, his uniform crisp, his expression neutral. With respect, High Arbiter, we didn't initiate warfare. We responded to a distress call from a vessel under attack. You could have disabled the Kryn vessels and withdrawn. Instead, you pursued fleeing ships, captured their crews, and delivered what some members consider an excessive display of force. A council member from the Phelan species, delicate beings who lived on low-gravity worlds, spoke up. Her voice trembled with emotion. The violence your species employs is disturbing, Captain. Fusion weapons? Solid projectiles? These are weapons of barbarians, not of civilized spacefaring cultures. Before Taiyang could respond, Ambassador Kelmuth stepped forward. His carapace was still slightly discolored from the repairs Dr. Yuna had made. If I may speak, High Arbiter? Shirek's lights flickered in acknowledgement. You may, Ambassador. The High Council has lectured species like mine for generations about proportional response in civilized warfare, Kelmuth began, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. We've followed these doctrines faithfully. We've watched as raiders like the Kryn exploit these very doctrines. They attack. We respond with minimal force as required by protocol, they escape with minimal losses, and they return months later to attack someone else. He turned to face the assembled council members. For 8 years, my government has filed complaints about Kryn raids in our sector. 8 years of sanctions, fines, and diplomatic protests. Do you know how many of our ships were attacked in those 8 years? 43. Do you know how many Veltari citizens were taken as slaves? 217. The chamber fell silent. These were public records, but hearing them spoken aloud made them impossible to ignore. These humans, Kelmuth continued, gesturing to Taiyang, did in 8 minutes what our peacekeeping forces couldn't do in 8 years. They stopped the Kryn, not just for today but permanently. Those ships won't raid again. That crew won't terrorize civilians again. My people are alive because these humans didn't follow your protocols. They followed their conscience. The Phelan representative trembled more visibly. But the aggression, the violence, this is not how advanced civilizations should behave. Taiyang spoke quietly, but his voice carried clearly through the chamber. Advanced civilizations should protect those who can't protect themselves. Your protocols are designed for species that value their own lives and will retreat when faced with determined resistance. But predators like the Kryn, they only understand strength. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or eye equivalents, of as many council members as he could. On Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We heard people in danger. We had the ability to help. We acted. I will not apologize for that. A Torvan representative, whose species served as the Council's primary military force, spoke up. Captain Taiyang, I think I understand your perspective. But you must understand ours. Your species is new to the galactic community. You come from an incredibly hostile world. Your instincts, your reactions, they're different from ours. The Council fears that if we condone your actions, other species might follow your example, leading to increased violence across the galaxy. With respect, sir, Taiyang replied, I think the Council fears the opposite. You're worried that if species see that direct action works better than your protocols, they might question why they've been following those protocols at all. The chamber erupted in murmurs and light patterns that indicated shock at such directness. Shirek's lights flared. Captain, you go too far. But Commander Minho, who was watching from Earth, had transmitted a data packet to the Council chambers. It appeared on screens throughout the room, communications logs from the past 3 days. Minho's voice came through the speakers. High Arbiter, these are messages we've received since the incident. I believe the Council should see them. The messages scrolled past. 17 frontier colonies requesting human patrol routes. 23 civilian vessels asking for escort services. 38 personal thank you messages from various species across the sector. Scientists, traders, explorers, all expressing gratitude and hope. One message was from a mother whose family lived on a remote mining colony. She wrote, For years we've lived in fear. Every time a ship appeared on our scanners, we worried it might be raiders. Now we have hope. Thank you for showing us that someone in this galaxy actually cares. Another was from a trader whose ship had been attacked twice by Kryn raiders. He wrote, "The council told us to file reports, to document incidents, to trust the system. The system failed us. These humans didn't." The messages kept coming. Real voices. Real people who felt safer now. Who had hope they didn't have before. Overseer Talwen, who had been observing quietly, spoke up. "High Arbiter, I submitted my full report 2 days ago. I interviewed everyone involved, humans, Veltari, and the captured Kryn. I reviewed all sensor logs and communications records. My conclusion is that Captain Taiyang and his crew acted appropriately given the circumstances." "Appropriately?" Shirek questioned. "They violated—" "They saved lives," Talwen interrupted gently. Her lights pulsed in patterns that conveyed absolute certainty. "They stopped criminals who have been operating with impunity for years. They inspired hope in communities we've failed to protect. Yes, they broke protocols, but perhaps our protocols are broken." The chamber fell silent again. This time, the silence was thoughtful rather than shocked. An elder representative from the Architects, one of the oldest species in the council, spoke in a voice that crackled with age. "I remember when my species first joined the council thousands of years ago. We were not so different from these humans. Young, aggressive, survivors of a difficult world. The council helped us learn peace. But perhaps in teaching peace, we forgot the value of strength. Strength to protect. Strength to act when action is needed." Another voice joined in, then another. The debate shifted from whether the humans had acted wrongly to whether the council's approach had been effective. Species who had lost people to raids spoke up. Those who lived in frontier regions where council protection was sparse shared their fears. Taiyang stood quietly through it all, saying nothing more. He had made his case. Now it was up to them. Finally, Shirek raised a hand for silence. His lights pulsed in a complex pattern that took several seconds to complete. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Captain Taiyang, the council cannot officially condone your actions. Doing so would set precedents that could be dangerous. However," he paused, and his lights flickered in what might have been the luminous equivalent of a smile. "We also cannot condemn them. You acted to save lives. You showed restraint when you could have shown none. You defeated enemies without causing unnecessary casualties." "What is the council's decision?" Taiyang asked. "There will be no formal reprimand. However, we strongly suggest that in future situations, you coordinate with council forces when possible. We would also like to discuss expanding human patrol routes to include several frontier sectors that have requested your presence." Taiyang nodded. "Thank you, High Arbiter. We would be happy to discuss expanded operations." After the session ended and the holograms faded, Taiyang found himself alone in the communication chamber with Ambassador Kelmith, whose hologram had remained. "You handled that well," Kelmith said. "Better than I expected, honestly. Most species would have tried to defend every action or apologize excessively. You just told the truth." "It's all we have to offer," Taeyang replied. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But we try to do what's right. Your species confuses the council, you know. You're dangerous but gentle, aggressive but protective. You don't fit into any of the categories they understand." Taeyang smiled slightly. "We confused ourselves for most of our history too. Took us a long time to figure out that we could be warriors and caretakers at the same time. That strength and kindness weren't opposites. Is that what you'll bring to the galaxy, that balance?" "I hope so. The galaxy needs protectors, not just peacekeepers who file reports and issue sanctions, but people willing to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. That's what humans do. It's what we've always done." Kelmith's carapace shifted in the Veltari gesture of respect. "Then I'm glad you're here, Captain. The galaxy is better for it." Back aboard the Indomitable, the crew had gathered in the mess hall to watch the council session on the ship's screens. When Shirek announced there would be no reprimand, a cheer went up. Dr. Yuna raised her glass. "To Captain Taeyang, for doing what needed to be done." The crew echoed the toast. Lieutenant Hana wiped at her eyes, emotional despite her professional composure. Commander Minho just smiled, proud of his captain and his crew. Dr. Yunji approached Weapons Officer Doyen, who had been unusually quiet. "You okay?" Doyen nodded. "Just thinking. We shot at those ships. Destroyed some of them. Killed people, even if we tried not to. That's not easy, even when it's necessary." "No," Yunji agreed. "It's not, and it shouldn't be. The day it becomes easy is the day we've lost something important." "You think we did the right thing?" "I think we did what humans do. We showed up. We helped. We protected people who needed protecting." "That's enough." Doyen smiled slightly. "Yeah, I guess it is." As the celebration continued, Taeyang returned to the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the quiet horizon was heading home. 40 Veltari scientists would get to see their families again. That alone made everything worthwhile. Nari approached from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a message from Earth Command. They're not sure whether to congratulate us or lecture us about following chain of command." Taeyang laughed. "Sounds about right. What else?" "We have requests from 7 different colonies asking for patrol assistance, and there's a personal message for you from Commander Thelvin." "Put it through." Thelvin's face appeared on the screen. He looked healthier, more confident than when they'd first met. "Captain Taeyang, I wanted to thank you again. My crew is home safely because of you. But I also wanted to tell you something. I've been talking to other Veltari captains and scientists. We're going to propose a joint research initiative with human scientists. We want to learn from you, and maybe teach you things too." Taeyang smiled warmly. "We'd be honored, Commander. Send the details to our science officer." "I will. And Captain, the galaxy is talking about what you did. Some species are frightened, but many more are hopeful. You've started something. I don't think anyone knows where it will lead, but it's started." After the call ended, Taeyang sat in his command chair and considered those words. Started something. Maybe that was true. Maybe this was the beginning of a shift in how the galaxy approached protection and justice. Or maybe it was just humans being humans, doing what they had always done, showing up when people needed help. Either way, he was proud of his crew and his species. They had done the right thing. That was enough. 2 weeks after the rescue of the Quiet Horizon, the story had spread across hundreds of systems. In bars and meeting halls, on trade stations and colony worlds, people talked about the humans who had responded to a distress call with overwhelming force and decisive action. The reactions were mixed. Some species viewed humans with increased fear. The Phelan government issued a formal statement expressing concern about aggressive species being rewarded for violent behavior. Several core world politicians echoed similar sentiments, comfortable in their heavily protected systems where raids were rare. But in the Outer Rim and frontier regions, the response was different. Captain Taeyang began receiving messages daily, not just from ships in distress, but from colonies who wanted to know if human patrol routes would include their sectors. From independent traders who asked if they could request human escorts. From families on remote stations who simply wanted to say thank you for giving them hope. Lieutenant Hana had set up a system to manage the flood of communications. She sat at her station on the bridge, sorting through requests and categorizing them by urgency and location. "Captain, we now have 37 requests for patrol assistance," she reported. 17 are from colonies on the outer edges of Council space. 20 are from independent trading routes where Council protection is minimal. Commander Minho studied the tactical display, which showed the requested areas marked in blue. "That's a lot of territory to cover, sir. We'd need at least 6 more ships to patrol all those sectors effectively." "What's Earth Command saying?" Taeyang asked. "They're considering it," Minho replied. "The Council is negotiating with Earth about expanding our operational area. Some members are pushing for it. Others are worried about giving humans too much influence." Taeyang nodded thoughtfully. Politics never moved as fast as need. While the Council debated and negotiated, people in frontier regions continued living in fear. As if to prove his point, Hana's console lit up with an emergency signal. "Captain, distress call. Colony vessel, Morning Star. 20 light years from our position. They report engine failure and unknown vessels approaching." "Time to Council response?" Taeyang asked, already knowing the answer would be too slow. Nearest council ship is 4 days out. Taeyang didn't hesitate. Set course. Maximum burn. Battle stations. Hana, try to establish contact with the Morning Star. Get me details on those unknown vessels. The bridge erupted into practiced motion. Nari's hands flew over her controls, plotting the fastest route. Weapons Officer Doyen began running checks on all systems. Dr. Yunji headed to the medical bay to prepare for possible casualties. Within minutes, the Indomitable was pushing hard toward the distress signal. The two escort destroyers, still under the command of Captains Hyun and Jisoo, followed close behind. Hana established a shaky connection with the Morning Star. A panicked voice came through. Captain Race, a Torvin merchant who ran a small transport operation. Thank the stars! This is Captain Race of the Morning Star. We have 32 colonists aboard, including children. Our main drive failed 2 hours ago. 3 vessels are approaching, and they're not responding to hails. They're running dark. No identification, no signals. We think they're raiders. Hold position, Captain Race, Taeyang said calmly. We're 17 minutes out. Can you tell me anything about the approaching vessels? Medium-sized, probably converted merchant ships. They match the profile of Grath raiders, pirates who operate in this sector. Taeyang looked at Minho, who was already pulling up intelligence files on the Grath. They were worse than the Kryn in some ways, less organized but more brutal. They didn't take slaves for profit. They took them for sport. Captain Race, I need you to stay calm, Taeyang said. Gather everyone in your most secure compartment. Seal the doors. We're coming. On the Morning Star, Captain Rice did as instructed. The 32 colonists, men, women, and children from 3 different species, huddled together in the cargo bay. It was the most reinforced part of the ship, with thick walls and limited access points. A young Veltari mother held her 2 children close. She had heard the stories about humans, about the rescue of the quiet horizon. She allowed herself to hope. The Grath vessels closed in on the Morning Star, like scavengers approaching a wounded animal. Their ships were ugly things, cobbled together from stolen parts and painted in colors meant to intimidate. They didn't bother with warnings or negotiations. They simply began cutting into the hull. Then their sensors picked up 3 vessels dropping out of hyperspace at extreme velocity. The lead ship's mass readings were off the scale, impossibly heavy for its size. Its heat signature showed engines running at levels that should have melted the drive cores. The Grath commander, a brutal individual named Krex, opened a channel to the newcomers. Turn back. This prey is ours. Captain Taeyang's face appeared on his screen. Those predator eyes. That calm, deadly expression. This is Captain Park Taeyang of the UHSV Indomitable. You are attacking an unarmed vessel carrying civilians. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Krex laughed. He had fought council peacekeepers before. They always negotiated, they always gave warnings, they always followed rules. Big words, human. You're outnumbered. We have 6 ships. You have 3. You have 6 ships, Taeyang agreed. We have 3 ships crewed by humans from a Class 12 Deathworld. I think we have the advantage. Krex cut the channel and ordered his ships to attack the human vessels while his boarding teams continued cutting into the Morning Star. It was a mistake he had only seconds to regret. The Indomitable. And its escorts moved with precision that came from thousands of hours of drill and generations of warfare. Nari threw the heavy cruiser into a dive that would have torn most ships apart. The G-forces pressed the crew deep into their gel couches, but they had evolved to endure. Doyen's railguns spoke first. Tungsten rounds traveling at impossible speeds punched through the Grath ship's shields like they were tissue paper. 2 ships exploded immediately. Their power cores breached. The destroyers flanked wide, catching the remaining Grath vessels in a crossfire. Hyun's ship targeted engines, while Jisoo's focused on weapon systems. Within 90 seconds, 3 more Grath ships were disabled and drifting. The last Grath vessel tried to run. Taeyang's voice was cold as he gave the order. Don't let it escape. Disable and capture. A single precise shot from the Indomitable destroyed the fleeing ship's engines, It tumbled helplessly through space. Meanwhile, Lance Corporal Seogen and his Marine team had launched in a boarding craft. They reached the Morning Star just as the Grath boarding party broke through the hull. The Marines hit the Grath from behind with devastating efficiency. Seogen moved through the corridors like a ghost in powered armor, his squad following in perfect coordination. The Grath never had a chance. They were used to fighting frightened civilians, not trained soldiers from a death world. Within minutes, the Grath boarding party was neutralized, stunned, restrained, and being hauled back to the Indomitable's brig. Seogen reached the cargo bay where the colonists had gathered. He deactivated his helmet so they could see his face. 32 terrified beings stared at him. "You're safe now," he said simply. "Let's get you checked out by medical." The young Veltari mother burst into tears of relief. Her children clung to her, and she clung to them. Saved. They were saved. Dr. Yuna and her team arrived quickly, checking each colonist for injuries. The children were frightened but unharmed. A few adults had minor injuries from the panic. Everyone was suffering from shock. Yuna knelt beside the Veltari children, making herself small and non-threatening. "Hey there, I'm Dr. Yuna. Are you okay?" The youngest child, no more than 5 in human years, looked at her with wide eyes. "Are you really from Earth? From the scary planet?" Yuna smiled gently. "I am, but Earth isn't scary to us. It's home, just like your world is home to you. But you fight monsters. Sometimes, when we have to protect people who need help. Like us? Exactly like you." The child considered this, then said something that would stay with Yuna forever. "I'm glad the monsters are on our side." Later, aboard the Indomitable, Captain Taeyang met with Captain Race in the medical bay. The Torvin was shaken but grateful. "I can't thank you enough," Race said, his voice rough with emotion. "If you hadn't come, those families—" "We came because you called," Taeyang replied. "That's what we do." "But why? We're not even council members. We're just a small transport operation. We have no political value, no strategic importance." "Your people," Taeyang said simply. "That's all the importance needed." Race stared at him, trying to understand this strange species that operated on principles so different from the rest of the galaxy. Finally, he said, "The Council should give your species free range to operate wherever you want. Let you patrol the entire frontier." "The Council is considering it," Taeyang said diplomatically. "Politics moves slowly. Too slowly. While they debate, people die." Taeyang couldn't argue with that. Over the next weeks, the pattern repeated. Distress calls came in. The Indomitable. And other human ships responded. Sometimes they arrived to find nothing, false alarms or situations that had resolved themselves. Sometimes they arrived to find raiders. Each time raiders were present, the humans dealt with them efficiently and decisively. Word spread quickly. Human ships had a reputation now. They didn't negotiate with pirates. They didn't file reports and let criminals escape. They stopped threats permanently. The effect rippled across the frontier. Raiders began avoiding sectors where human ships patrolled. Some gave up raiding entirely, knowing that one encounter with humans could be their last. The Kryn, already weakened from their losses, pulled back to safer regions. But not everyone was happy about this. In a secure facility on a core world, a group of species leaders met in secret. They represented various factions who had grown wealthy and powerful under the current system. "The humans are disrupting everything," one said. "Trade routes we controlled are now under their protection. Colonies that paid us for security are requesting human patrols instead." "It's worse than that," another added. "They're making the council look weak. People are questioning why council peacekeepers don't act like humans do." "Because we're civilized," a third snapped. "We follow rules. We believe in proportional response and diplomatic solutions. And while we follow rules, the humans follow their instincts. They act, they solve problems, and people love them for it." The group fell silent, considering the implications. Finally, the eldest among them spoke. We cannot attack the humans directly. They're too popular now and honestly, too dangerous. But we can work through the council, pressure them to restrict human operations, bog them down in regulations and oversight. Will that work? It will slow them down, and that might be enough. But even as these forces worked against them, the humans continued their mission. On Galactic Council Station Harmony 9, Ambassador Kelmuth was working with other frontier representatives to push for expanded human patrol routes. The humans have proven themselves, he argued in a council session. They've reduced raider activity in their patrol sectors by 80%. 80% in just a few weeks. At what cost? A core world representative challenged. They've destroyed dozens of vessels, killed hundreds of individuals. Raiders and pirates who were preying on innocents. Kelmuth shot back. The council has filed sanctions against these same groups for decades. The humans actually stopped them. The debate continued, but slowly the council was changing. More frontier representatives spoke up. More species shared stories of human rescue operations. The narrative was shifting. Aboard the Indomitable, now returning to Earth space for resupply, the crew monitored these developments. Lieutenant Hana had her console displaying real-time news feeds from across the galaxy. "We're becoming famous," she said with a slight smile. "Or infamous, depending on who you ask." "How do you feel about that?" Taeyong asked. Hana thought about it. "Honestly, I joined the fleet to explore space and maybe make a difference. I didn't expect to become a symbol. But if it helps people feel safer, I guess I'm okay with it." Around the bridge, others nodded in agreement. They hadn't sought fame or glory. They had just responded to distress calls. They had just done their jobs. But somehow, that simple act, showing up when people needed help, had started something bigger than any of them had anticipated. Commander Minho approached with a datapad. "Sir, updated request count. We now have 73 colonies asking for human patrol coverage. Earth Command is mobilizing 6 more ships to help meet the demand." "That's good," Taeyang said. "But it's still not enough." "No," Minho agreed. "It's not. But it's a start." Taeyang looked out at the stars streaming past. Somewhere out there, people were in danger. People who needed help. And somewhere, human ships were responding, because that's what humans did. The galaxy had wanted peacekeepers who followed protocols and measured responses. What they got were Deathworlders who followed their conscience and measured success by lives saved. Some species found this frightening. Others found it inspiring. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy would never be quite the same. As the Indomitable approached Earth, Taeyang received a final message. It was from that young Veltari child on the Morning Star. Her mother had helped her record it. "Thank you for saving us," the child's voice said. "My mom says you're heroes. I think you're just nice people who help when people need help. That's what heroes are, right? Just nice people who don't give up? When I grow up, I want to be like you. Not scary, but brave. Not mean, but strong. Just someone who shows up when others need help." Taeyang smiled. That child understood better than most adults. Being a hero wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It was about showing up, about caring, about refusing to walk away when someone needed you. "That's what we'll bring to the galaxy," he said quietly to himself. Not fear, not domination. Just the simple promise that when you call for help, someone will answer. And across the stars, that promise spread. In whispered conversations on dark stations, in hopeful messages sent to human ships, in the growing confidence of colonists who had lived in fear for years. The Deathworlders had arrived, not with conquest or demands, but with a simple offer. "We'll protect you. We'll show up. We won't abandon you." It was an offer the galaxy hadn't known it needed. But now that it was here, everything had changed.